Impressions of America by a Very Fresh Spaniard by José Martí. Translated by Esther Allen. Read by Alejandro Martinez. Preface. During Martí's first extended stay in the United States in 1880, he was invited by influential journalist and publisher Charles Anderson Dana to contribute to a New York weekly literary magazine called The Hour. All told, Martí published 29 short essays in the magazine that year, most of them originally written in French on diverse topics such as Raimundo Madrazo, February 21st, Fortuny, March 20th, and the Metropolitan Museum, April 3rd. Among them was the following series of articles on his initial impressions of the United States. These he wrote in English, with what seems to have been rather minimal intervention from his editors, and they appear here exactly as they did in The Hour. End of preface. 1. I am, at last, in a country where everyone looks like his own master. One can breathe freely, freedom being here the foundation, the shield, the essence of life. One can be proud of his species here. Everyone works, everyone reads. Only, does everyone feel in the same degree that they read and work? Man, as a strong creature, made to support on his shoulders the burden of misfortune, never bent, never tired, never dismaying, is unrivaled here. Are women, those beings that we, the Southern people, like feeble and supple, tender and voluptuous, as perfect in their way as men are to theirs? Activity, devoted to trade, is truly immense. I was never surprised in any country of the world I have visited. Here I was surprised, as I arrived, in one of these summer days, when the face of hasty businessmen are at the same moment fountains and volcanoes, when, bag in hand, the vest open, the necktie detached, I saw the diligent New Yorkers running up and down, buying here, selling there, transpiring, working, going ahead. When I remarked that no one stood quietly in the corners, no door was shut an instant, no man was quiet, I stopped myself. I looked respectfully on this people, and I said goodbye forever to that lazy life and poetical inutility of our European countries. I remember the sentence of an old Spaniard, a healthy countryman, father of 36 sons. Quote, only those who dig their bread have a right to eat it, and, as if they dig most deeply, they will eat it whiter. But is this activity devoted in the same extent to the development of these high and noble anxieties of soul that cannot be forgotten by a people who want to escape from unavoidable ruin and strepitous definitive crumbling? When the days of poverty may arrive, what richness, if not that of spiritual strength and intellectual comfort, will help this people in its colossal misfortune? Material power, as that of Carthage, if it rapidly increases, rapidly falls down. If this love of richness is not tempered and dignified by the ardent love of intellectual pleasures, if kindness towards men, passion for all what is great, devotion to all what means sacrifice and glory, are not as developed as fervorous and absorbent passion for money, where shall they go? Where shall they find sufficient cause to excuse this hard burden of life and feel relief to their sorrow? Life wants permanent roots. Life is unpleasant without the comforts of intelligence, the pleasures of art, and the internal gratification that the goodness of the soul and the exquisiteness of taste produce to us. I am deeply obliged to this country, where the friendless find always a friend, and a kind hand is always found by those who look honestly for work. A good idea finds always here a suitable, soft, grateful ground. You must be intelligent, that is all. Give something useful. You will have all what you want. Doors are shut for those who are dull and lazy. Life is sure to those who are faithful to the law of work. When I was a child, I read with admiration, born as I am in a country where there is no field for individual activity, a series of biographies, as those who are called here with a magnificent simplicity, self-made men. My childhood was not entirely gone out when I admired again in British Honduras a wealthy southern family brought by misfortune to painful scantiness, and raising by their hands, in the thick bosom of forest, a clean, elegant, prosperous sugar plantation. The father, an ancient governor of a powerful state, was the engineer. The charming mother, very simply dressed, with a perpetual smile on her lips, the smile of those who are courageous enough to support human sufferings, was the most skilful housekeeper I have ever seen. Hot cakes, fine pastry, fresh milk, sweet jelly, were always on hand. When she came to me, the noble face illuminated by the most pure look, the curled silver hair carefully dressed, a waiter with exquisite dishes in her wrinkled hands, the sweetest feelings filled my heart, and tears of pleasure came to my eyes. The sons helped the father in all kinds of labors. They plowed the field, sawed the sugar cane, burned the woods, built a new, sweet home, and as slightly dressed as miserable countrymen in those far forests do. Very early in the morning, merrily singing, they drove the oxen to the hardest work of the plantation, and they were elegant, gentle, learned young men. I will study a most original country at its birth, in the school, at its development, in the family, at its pleasures, in the theater, in the clubs, in 14th Street, in large and small family party. I will go, in a brilliant Sunday, walking down the fashionable Fifth Avenue to the crowded church to hear a preacher, the word of peace, speaking about politics or the field of war. I will see many nonsenses, many high deeds, the politicians who saved the country, when they could, without any effort to go back to the days of arrogant militarism, violation of the public will, corruption of the political morality. I will see benevolent faces of men, defiant faces of women, the most capricious and uncommendable fancies, all the greatness of freedom and all the miseries of prejudices. Here, a powerful originality. There, a vulgar imitation of transatlantic extravagances. Liberty in politics, in customs, in enterprises. Humble slavery in taste. Frenchmen give the sacred word. Great names, and not great works, are looked for. As there is not a fixed mind on art, the most striking is the most loved. There is no taste for the sweet beauty of Helene or Galathea, the taste being all devoted to old imperfect works of China and Japan. If a scientific object would have been intended by the owners of these bibelots, it would be a matter of praise. But it is only for the sensual pleasure of indiscreetly holding foreign goods bought at a high price. At a first glance, what else can I tell? I have all my impressions vividly awakened. The crowds of Broadway, the quietness of the evenings, the character of men, the most curious and noteworthy character of women, the life in the hotel that will never be understood for us, that young lady, physically and mentally stronger than the young man who courts her, that old gentleman, full of wisdom and capacity, who writes in a sobriest language for 100 newspapers, this feverish life, this astonishing movement, this splendid sick people, in one side wonderfully extended, in other side that of intellectual pleasures, childish and poor. This colossal giant, candorous and credulous. These women, too richly dressed to be happy. These men, too devoted to business of pocket, with remarkable neglectness of the spiritual business. All is, at the same time, coming to my lips, and begging to be prepared in this brief account of my impressions. Size and number, these are here the elements of greatness. Nothing is absolutely neglected, however. If the common people, increased every day by a thirsty foreign population, that must not be confounded with the true American people, shows that anxious desire for money, and fights frightfully in this way. The true Americans preserve national greatness, constitutional rights, old and honorable names, from the vulgar storm of immigration, that brings in strength and possibilities of wealth, what they lack of intellectual height and moral deepness. In the columns of a newspaper, in the page of a magazine, in the familiar chit-chat, the most pure feelings, noble aspirations, and generous ideas bravely fight for the rapid improvement of the country, in the sense of moral development. It will be reached. It has not yet been reached, because many strangers bring here their odiums, their wounds, their moral ulcers. What a terrible enemy the desperate want of money is for the achievement of virtues. How great a nation must be to conduct in a quiet way these bands of wolves, hungry and thirsty, these excrescences of old poor countries, ferocious or unuseful there, and here, under the influence of work, good, kind, and tame. And, for the mot de la fin, let me tell you what had happened to me, as I came, a week ago, from Cape May, a charming watering place, to Philadelphia. The train near to the station jumped off the tracks. The car where I was fell sideway. The accident was without consequences. But as everybody was compelled by the shaking and pulling of the car to abandon violently their seats, the moment was a solemn one. Women became deadly pale. Men forgot women, looking for their own salvation. I thought, first, what must occur to a man under such a case, and, in the same instant, I saw rolling a poor 80 years woman on the floor. I ran to her, offering her my hands. The old lady, very elegant indeed, notwithstanding her large amount of years, looked at me gratefully, tended her hands toward me, but, as she touched the extreme of my fingers with their own, she told me, with expressive, frightened grimaces, "By the hands, no! Go away, go away!" Was she an old Puritan? The Hour, New York, July 10th, 1880. 2. Let us begin this time by a curious confession. This is the only country, of all those I have visited, where I have remained a week without becoming particularly devoted and deeply attached to some woman. Even in Southampton, where in a brilliant half an hour I saw a sweet girl, we loved ourselves, and we bid good-bye forever. Even while crossing a magnificent country, the Atlantic coast of Guatemala, where, like a crowned Venus emerging from the spring of a clear river, a supple, slender but voluptuous Indian woman showed herself to the thirsty traveler with all the majestic power of a new kind of impressive and suggestive beauty. I loved and was beloved. Everywhere, a woman's soul has come to bless and sweeten my exhausted life. But I have not found in New York my two lovely eyes. That is a curious case, because I feel rapidly beauty of the body and or the soul, and I pay both sudden and fervently vehement admiration. I attach myself most vigorously to a clear mind, a generous heart, a deep and tender eye. I have spent many a sunny afternoon between 14th and 23rd Street. I have visited, I have talked, I have dined with American women. I have been acquainted with serious ladies, with most gay young ladies. They have translated my verses, they have decorated the buttonhole of my evening dress. They even have, in a noisy, cordial party, crowned me with a bonbonniere, representing a chicken's head. But I am still as an inconsolable widow, awaiting the first powerful emotion. Education and politeness, although not of kind we like in Europe, is quite common here. Beauty is the general endowment. Culture is spreading, but French tastes invade and penetrate the elegant world. But where are the chaste abandon, the savory languor, the Haydée-like looks, the tender sweetness and gentle grace of our southern women? Man here is both strong-minded and strong-bodied. If he usually drowns in the stormy business tide, the intellectual and refined pleasures which charm us and occupy us in old romantic Europe, he remains kind because he is prosperous. He has the strength of gladness. He gains it by his vigorous efforts. He has an athletic development secured by his continual work in the red-hot forge of life. But why should women look so manly? Their fast going up and down stairs, up and down the streets, the resolute, well-defined object of all their actions, their too virile existence, deprive them of the calm beauty, the antique grace, the exquisite sensitiveness which make of women those superior beings, of whom Calderon said that they were a brief world. A friend of mine told me once, while we were paying a visit to an always smiling, always talking, never resting Andaluz lady, quote, "If your tired veins need a new, powerful blood, and you want to see a land less obstructed by the ruins of feudal castles, old heavy churches, go to that marvelous land, America. But if you want, as I want, a woman's smile to live upon, take with you this gentlewoman. Their women never smile." The great heart of America cannot be judged by the distorted, morbid passion, ardent desires, and anguishes of New York life. In this turbulent stream, natural currents of life cannot appear. All is darkened, unhinged, dusty. Virtues and vices cannot be at first glance properly analyzed. They run away tumultuously mingled. Prejudice, vanity, ambition, every poison of the soul, effaces or stains the American nature. It is necessary to look for it, not in the crowded street, but in the sweet home quietness, not in the convulsive life of the city, but in the open-hearted existence of the country. Young women in America are remarkable by their excessive gaiety or excessive seriousness. Their control over themselves their surety of being respected, their calculated coldness, their contempt of passions, their dry, practical notions of life, give them a singular boldness and a very peculiar frankness in their relations with men. What I have seen and heard is, indeed, painfully suggestive. The love of riches moves and generally guides feminine actions in this country. American women seem to have only one necessary thought when they see a new man. How much is that man worth? Such thoughts deform and harden the most handsome faces, made by the Almighty to be the consolation of misfortune, the home of grace, tenderness, nobleness. A conversation I have heard, sharp and cold as the end of a weapon, deserves to be remembered. God has never intended the young woman to speak in such a way. It was in a literary party. Arrogant New York ladies cruelly sneered at a Western wealthy family, whose recent prosperity and humble beginnings were denounced by the heavy luxury of the dresses, the striking colors of the silks, and a certain provincial candor which inexpert parvenus bring always to their first excursions into society. But mockery of this kind is especially unreasonable in this country, where nobody has a right to disdain the modest cradle of others, all being born in a similar poor cradle. The New Yorkers who now mock at the showy, vulgar, amusing Western family must not forget that the same natural pride and social inexperience marked undoubtedly the first business triumphs and prosperous years of their equally modest ancestors. A plow or an engine are, gloriously indeed, the only blazons of American families. No goldfields, no plumed helmet, no fierce dragon in their coat of arms. Hard work and self-made prosperity are their only armorial ensigns. Sons of toil, they ought to be all brothers. An old rich man must not sneer at a new rich man, for they came, in one or two degrees, from the same mother, poverty, from the same father, work. An old plow has no reason for disdaining a new one. The time that distances the one from the other is not a reason for mockery. For my own part, I like better the man who has just used the plow than another who has forgotten the manner of using it. The Hour, New York, August 21st, 1880. 3. We read in Europe many wonderful statements about this country, the splendor of life, the abundance of money, the violent struggles for its possession, the golden currents that dazzle and blind the vulgar people, the excellencies of instruction, the habit of working, the vision of that new country arising above the old ruins of old nations, excite the attention of thoughtful men, who are anxiously looking for the definitive settlement of all the destructive forces that began during the last century to lay the foundations of a new era of mankind. This could be, and ought to be, the transcendental significance of the United States. But have the states the elements they are supposed to have? Can they do what they are expected to do? Do they impose their own character, or do they suffer the imposition of the character of others? Is America going to Europe, or Europe coming to America? Error, both in politics and religion, has been worshipped in the Old World. Truth, liberty, and dignity are supposed to have reached, at last, a sure heart in the New World. We must ask for a response to these secrets of the home life from the benches of the schoolrooms, the daily newspaper, and conversation in society. Eloquent answers to all mystifications strike the observer as he goes through the streets. We must ask women for the natural end of their unextinguishable thirst for pleasure and amusement. We must ask them if a being so exclusively devoted to the possession of silk dresses, dazzling diamonds, and all kinds of costly fancies could afterwards carry into their homes those solid virtues, those sweet feelings, that kind resignation, that evangelic power of consolation which can only keep up a hearth shaken by misfortune, and inspire children with contempt for regular pleasures, and the love of internal satisfactions that make men happy and strong, as they did Ismael, against the days of poverty. We must ask a boy of 14 what he knows and what he is taught. We must observe in the newspapers what they place before the public, news or ideas. We must look at what people read, what they applaud, and what they love. And, as these problems cannot be answered in a page, or understood and remembered by a newcomer, I have taken here and there some memoranda. Here, from my notebook, are some. What do I see? A girl 7 years old goes to school. She talks with an unusual ease to other girls. This miniature of a woman has all the self-control of a married woman. She looks and smiles at me as if she could know all the mysteries of mankind. Her ears are adorned with heavy earrings, her little fingers with rings. Where can this wonderful volubility come from? What will this little girl, so fond of jewelry at 7 years, do for it at 16? Slavery would be better than this kind of liberty. Ignorance would be better than this dangerous science. I went downtown by the elevated railroad. As I traveled by this perilous but seductive way, I lost all hope of understanding Americans when I heard the name of a street, Chambers Street, always pronounced in an indistinct way by the conductors. Is it Chamber, or Chamber? Is it Houston, House, or House? Is it Franklin, Frank, or Frank? It is curious to observe that I can always understand an Englishman when he speaks to me, but among the Americans a word is a whisper, a sentence is an electric commotion, and if somebody asks me how can I know if a language that I so badly write is badly spoken, I will tell frankly that it is very frequent that critics speak about what they absolutely ignore. There is, among the Americans, an excellent writer, the humorist Mark Twain, and has he not presented the gifted king of Bavaria, a poet, an enthusiast, a knight of old times, as a savage who obliged the singers of his theatre to play the same opera twice in a night, under the most terrible rain that could fall over the poor Bavarians? He astonishes himself with the mastodontic composition of German words. All conversation is here in a single word, no breathe, no pause, not a distinct sound. We see that we are in the land of railroads. That's all. Didn't, won't, ain't, indeed. Nice weather, very pleasant. Coney Island, excursion. That is all that I can seize when I listen with anxious attention to the average American. When I listen to men and women of culture, I have been able to appreciate how the correctness of Addison can be mingled with the acuteness of Swift and the strength of Carlyle with the charming melody of Longfellow. Among women, as their usual kindness inclines them to soften the asperity of their language, in order to be easily understood by the foreigner, the English tongue appears exceptionally harmonious. Everything could be pardoned to these indefatigable talkers if they would speak in such a way, in order to employ the time that seems to be always short for them. But if, by a marvel, you can fathom the sense of those whirling words, you will remark that a vulgar subject is, commonly, too extensively developed. I love silence and quietness. Poor Chatterton was right when he desperately longed for the delights of solitude. The pleasures of cities begin for me when the motives which make pleasure for others are fading away. The true day for my soul dawns in the midst of the night. As I took yesterday evening my usual nocturne walk, many pitiful sights made a painful impression upon me. One old man, dressed in that style which reveals at the same time that good fortune we have had and the bad times that begin for us, stepped silently under a street lamp. His eyes, fixed upon the passers-by, were full of tears. His hand held a poor handkerchief. He could not articulate a single word. His sighs, not his words, begged for assistance. A little farther on, in 14th Street, a periodic sound, as a distant lamentation, sprang from the shadow. A poor woman knelt on the sidewalk, as if looking for her grave, or for strength to lift on her shoulders the hoarse organ whose crank her dying hand was turning. I passed through Madison Square, and I saw 100 robust men, evidently suffering from the pangs of misery. They moved painfully, as if they wished to blot out of their minds their sorrowful thoughts, and were all lying down on the grass or seated on the benches, shoeless, foodless, concealing their anguish under their dilapidated hats. The Hour, New York, October 23rd, 1880.